to another installment of Teddy's Tips. Today on Teddy's Tips, we'll be discussing some common protection modes that you might find in some of your power supplies, such as in the N6700 series and in the E4360 series. So let's begin with looking at the power protections that are found in the whole N6700 family and in the E4360 family. So like I said, this can be found in the N67 3X, 4X, 5X, 6X, 7X, and 8X. And in the E4360X. These are the OCP, OVP, OT, and PF. Now the OCP is the overcurrent protection. This is a programmable value, but it needs to be enabled for it to be active. So once the current reaches this limit, the power supply's outputs will be turned off. Likewise, for the OVP is the overvoltage protection, and once the voltage reaches its limit, the outputs will be turned off. However, the OVP is always enabled. OT is not overtime, but it's the over temperature protection. This is a factory default setting, and once it reaches this limit, the outputs turn off. PF stands for power failure. If there's a power failure in the AC main to the power supply turns off the outputs in order to protect the DUT and the power supply itself. So now we will look at some more specific power supply protections to specific units. So we will first look at the N6701, 82, and 84. These modules have the OSC protection, the OV minus protection, VL plus and minus, and CL plus and minus. The OSC protection stands for the oscillation protection setting. So if the output has an oscillation on it, the power supply detects this and turns off the output in order to save or protect the power supply and the DUT. The OV minus, just like the OVP, is an overvoltage protection. But however, these modules are either 2 or 4 quadrant modules, so they have a negative voltage also. So once the voltage reaches this negative limit, the outputs will be turned off. These power supplies also can be turned on in current priority or in voltage priority. So when you're operating the power supply in current priority, you set this voltage limit, plus and minus limit. And when the voltage reaches this, it's limited at that voltage, and the current will need to change in order to obey Ohm's law. CL plus and minus is the same thing as VL plus and minus. However, you're operating the power supply here in the voltage priority mode. So, moving on to the N67.5X and the N67.6X. These have CP plus and CP minus. CP plus is where the maximum power of the power module has been reached or has been exceeded. So for the N67.5X and N67.6X, the CP plus just limits the power to the maximum power, does not let it go past that. Same thing with the CP minus. However, in the N67 3X, 4X, and 7X, they also have CP plus and CP minus, but they act a little differently. When the power supply enters the CP plus mode, the outputs actually turn off. However, in the CP minus for these, just like in these modules, the power is just limited, and once the power being drawn is less, it will go into either CV or CC mode. So, let me just erase these. And take a look at the E4360X. This has a power protection constant to itself called OS for over switching. Since this power supply does shunt switching, It monitors if the shunt switching goes past the 50 kilohertz threshold. If it does, it turns off the outputs in order to protect the power supply. So, these are some of the power protections that we have in our power modules. I'm glad that you joined us in this segment and hope to see you again next time.